My husband thinks he's in the Truman Show and accuses me of plotting against him, so I recorded his rants. Now he's on a psychiatric hold against his will, and I have no idea if I can trust him again. Posted by u/top_manufacturer_620. My 30F spouse, 35M, has been experiencing behavior that has only become increasingly concerning. In the past 2 months, he has been talking about things he claims are happening but that he's never mentioned before. As some background, when his behavior first started getting concerning, I managed to convince him to go to the hospital to get checked out for his mental health. He wasn't even seen by a doctor and was just told he needed to take a certain medicine to help him sleep. The issue is, he also smokes marijuana, so this medicine does not mix well with that. He won't quit smoking. We also have 2 very young kids. Back to the recent strange behavior, he claims he had an old email with an inheritance that got hacked, and he needs access to it. I tried helping him get into it, but he hasn't used it in the 12 years we've been together. I only knew of its existence when I helped him switch his Facebook login, as that email was attached. Another example is that he believes everyone is talking about him to me and everyone else, literally everyone. He thinks there's some big plan to hurt him or do something horrible to him soon, and that we're all involved. On a few separate occasions, he's asked about a show that we're on and questioned how much money I'm being paid to keep a secret. He also thinks I'm having secret phone calls, claiming that I leave the room to accept these calls and return crying about something I've supposedly discussed. Whenever I try to explain that none of this is happening, he insists I'm lying and demands I tell him the truth, saying something bad will happen if I don't. It's gotten so bad that he ended up getting fired from his job because he was barely showing up. Instead of going to work, he kept going to the police station to make reports. After he was fired, his workplace called for a wellness check because they were afraid he might return and hurt someone. The police showed up while I was home, and he insisted he wouldn't hurt anyone unless in self-defense. In the past few weeks, he has gone from screaming at me and demanding answers to just not talking to me at all. At this point, I'd rather he not interact with me. The reason I'm writing this is because of what happened today. It was a nice day, so I asked if he would come with me for a walk with our kids, to which he agreed. He barely spoke to me or the kids during the walk. When we came across a playground, I suggested letting the kids play for a few minutes. He got upset and accused me of controlling everything, calling me the queen of decisions. I hadn't even insisted, we were just discussing it. When I pointed this out, he said, "Do whatever you want, like always." So, I played with the kids at the playground while he threw around some balls that were left there. At one point, he picked up a football and threw it in my direction, missing me by a couple of feet. When I asked why he did that, he said, "Why are you upset? It didn't hit you." I responded, "What if it had?" He replied, "If I wanted it to hit you in the head, I would have thrown it that way." He then went on a rant about everyone lying to him and sat in the corner of the park, doing nothing. I packed up the kids and started walking home. I told him, "We're going home," and began to leave. Apparently, he called out to us, but instead of catching up, he took a different route. When he finally caught up to us, he said, "Next time you want to be an idiot and walk away, maybe stop and listen when I call out." Frustrated, I decided to go for a drive to get coffee and told him so. I said I wanted to take the kids, and he questioned why. When I suggested he stay home with them, he said no, they could go with me, and he started putting them in the car. When I got in the car, he got in the passenger seat. I told him I didn't want him coming with us because he was being mean. He replied that he could be much meaner. As I drove, he started ranting again, and I told him I didn't want to hear it. He began screaming at me to keep driving and to shut up. I stopped the car and told him to get out. He made a motion like he was going to punch me but hit his own hand in front of my face instead. At that point, I broke down, crying and yelling at him to get out. He refused and said I should drive him to the police station. I told him I would, and he threatened to choke me unconscious before we got there. I cried even harder and said I didn't want to be with him anymore, that I wanted him out. He refused, continuing to belittle me for the rest of the drive. When we got home, he mocked me, asking how long I'd been waiting to break up with him and who I was replacing him with. I told him there was no one else, but he didn't believe me. Once inside, he even taunted me in a mocking voice, saying, "I should take you to the police station." Now, he's outside smoking, and I'm inside with the kids, writing this. I don't know what to do. We only have one vehicle, which is in both our names, and the place we rent belongs to my mom, so we don't have a lease. We both have our addresses attached to this place on our licenses. He wasn't always like this, his behavior has only been this bad for the past couple of months. I miss the person he used to be, someone who spent time with me and the kids. Now, he isolates himself entirely. I don't know if he's having a manic episode or if something else is triggering this change. Is there anything I can do to help him? Every time he talks about his situation, he doesn't accept any answer I give or even my silence. Edit. I just wanted to update and let you all know we are safe. I'm sorry for not saying anything sooner. I'm overwhelmed with how popular this post has gotten and will provide an update later. Thank you for the advice and comments. A couple of clarifications. We are not in the US. Grass is legal where we are, and my spouse gets it from government-run dispensaries. I don't think his supply is laced, aside from the fact that he mixes it with cigs. Many people mention chalk dust, but there's no way. He doesn't go anywhere random, doesn't talk to anyone outside our household, aside from the police, and I have his phone location, so I know where he is when he leaves. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I just want to say, I was that terrified kid in the back seat. Absolutely traumatizing. My mom always came up with an excuse as to why we couldn't leave the house or leave Dad. It made me suffer for many years of my life, and now, at 28 years old, I'm trying to deal with the trauma it caused. Please stop making excuses and leave. Get out for the kids. My mom never did, and it has truly ruined my mental health. Commenter 2. Wow, this is way more urgent than everyone seems to be acting. Are you able to sneak yourself and your kids out right now while he's smoking? You could start by going to the police station and telling them what's going on. They should hopefully be able to connect you to resources for families fleeing domestic abuse. If you have someone you can stay with, that makes it easier. Either way, do not spend another night in that house with him, and definitely don't let your kids around him unsupervised. If sneaking out isn't possible, I would call emergency services, tell them what just happened and about his threats, and explain that you need to get out because you are afraid for your and your children's safety. They aren't always the most helpful, but something needs to happen. At least if he comes back in and tries something, you'll already be on the phone with them, and they can send someone immediately. That could also be a good strategy while you're leaving if you're worried he might catch you. It sounds like he's having some kind of psychological break. The paranoia and being convinced of a conspiracy are not uncommon in such cases. But he has clearly shown you that he is a danger to you. Your first priority must be to get yourself and your kids to safety. You can figure out the rest later. Once it's time to deal with him, depending on where you are, getting him involuntarily detained for psychiatric treatment often requires proof that he's a danger to himself or others. His threats against you should help with that. Commenter 3. Heavy grass use can trigger the onset of schizophrenia in people who are already susceptible. Your husband is right at the age where this tends to happen in men. I'm not a doctor, but this sounds like a mental health emergency, possibly triggered by substance interaction, substance use itself, or the rapid development of a psychotic disorder. You need to consult a mental health professional, not the emergency room, and describe all of this behavior, including how frequently he uses grass. That's the thing, he saw a crisis nurse at the hospital and a therapist/social worker there, but it felt like all they did was try to get him to take a specific medication. I think it's called quetiapine or something. I don't think he is regularly taking it, and if he is, he definitely shouldn't be mixing it with grass. Commenter 3. Quetiapine is the generic name for Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic medication often used for schizophrenia and bipolar I episodes. That makes a lot more sense than prescribing a sleeping pill. You're absolutely right that he needs to be taking it as prescribed. Check the bottle for dosing instructions. I looked up the substance interactions, it's mostly moderate and physical, but generally, people with psychotic disorders are advised not to use grass. Commenter 4. Just call the police for assistance to leave. If you have somewhere to go, it's that simple. I've done it. He'll put on a good front, but you need to tell them you are in fear for your life because he threatened to strangle you. You can't wallow and act scared, not in front of your kids. He's already traumatized them enough. You can also have him removed for threatening your life and change the locks. Don't let another day pass like this. Update 1. 6 days later. Hello, first of all, thank you all for the comments, messages, and support on my previous post. It became too much to keep up with responding, but I want to say that I truly appreciate the help. I left the house the night I made the post but returned home the next day. I wanted to gather evidence I could use, as my spouse has been very good at downplaying his symptoms to authority figures. I was present at most of his doctor and hospital visits, so I know what they recommended for him. At the time, I felt they didn't provide enough help for the obvious crisis he was going through. In the days following the post, he didn't engage much with me or the children. Every time he entered the room, I set my phone to record. I didn't capture anything significant until Thursday, when he finally began talking to me again. He started questioning who I had been talking to about him and who was trying to sabotage his life. I denied everything because, aside from this Reddit post, which he didn't know about, no one was discussing him with me. This denial angered him. He yelled at me and said that if anyone was talking to me about him, I should bring them to the house so he could take care of them himself. I tried not to engage further, which only upset him more. He began demanding answers and made comments like, "Oh, I want to hit you or don't make me slap you when I didn't respond or said I didn't know what he was talking about. I recorded this interaction. Afterward, he walked away, leaving the room. I took the kids to bed, locked us in our room, and tried to sleep. The next morning, he insisted on driving me to work. I told him I wanted the car, but he disagreed, saying he needed it. After dropping off the kids, he started berating me, calling me stupid, dumb, a witch, etc., accusing me of withholding his inheritance, a clear delusion. I stayed on the far side of the passenger seat to avoid him, which caused him to grab me by the back of my neck, pulling me closer as he told me to listen to him. I was visibly upset and told him to focus on driving and not to touch me again. After dropping me off at work, he continued yelling at me through the open car window. The last thing I said was, "You desperately need help." Once I was inside, I called my boss and told her what had happened. She came in, canceled her appointments for the day, and took me to the police station. We made a report, though the sergeant we initially spoke to seemed hesitant about the process, repeatedly saying my husband would be homeless if I filed the report, almost framing him as the victim. I insisted that my safety and the safety of my children were more important. Another officer stepped in to take my statement. After completing the statement, they instructed me to stay away from the house while they arrested him and promised to call once he was out of the home. About 5 hours later, they arrested him. He was compliant, and with the information I provided, they transported him to the hospital, where he is currently on a 30-day psychiatric hold. He will face court for uttering threats and assault, but given that he has no prior criminal record, I expect it may result in a minimal sentence. For now, I am home and safe with the children, and we are in the process of getting the locks changed. I will likely pursue a protection order, though I hope, in an ideal world, he will get better and it won't be necessary. Time will tell. Thank you again for all the advice and support. Many of you made excellent points. I know some of my decisions may have seemed unwise, but I was trying to figure out the best solution for us logistically. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I swear, the police and that sergeant trying to talk you out of it, this is why people hesitate to go to the police. What a mystery. Good luck, Op. Commenter 2. I dealt with something similar, but thankfully not with a romantic partner, and we didn't share assets or children. It was terrifying, and I'm still affected by it daily. My friend ended up being diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, paranoid schizophrenia. He did really well on medication, so well that he stopped believing he had an issue and quit taking the meds. His latest bout of mania legitimately scared me, and I had to remove myself. Your husband is starting down a very long road. Many mentally ill people struggle to stay consistent in their treatment. I'm not saying you must remove him from your life, but I do believe you have the best chance of healing and raising emotionally healthy children if you do. Your love for him and the family you've built can't sustain mental illness. Love alone isn't enough. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is step away. I'm so sorry you're in this situation. Commenter 3. Paranoid schizophrenia runs in my family. The problem with your husband is that he's already become more violent, and it will likely get worse if you let him return to the home. I've seen family members improve on medication, only to decide they weren't ill and stop taking their meds, over and over again. I've also seen them behave normally in front of others, making it difficult to get them the help they need. One of my family members attempted to murder their caregivers and nearly succeeded. Another tried to harm someone they thought was real but who was actually a hallucination. You are not safe. Your children are not safe. You need to take this more seriously. Commenter 4. I'm very proud of you for taking the first step toward a healthier life for your kids and yourself. To stay on this path, you need to stop hoping for the best and start preparing for the worst. It's a long road, but you've shown the intelligence and strength to see this through. That being said, he's not going to get better in 30 days. Get that restraining order as soon as possible. First, it will be served while he's in custody, so you won't need to track him down. Second, filing quickly shows the court you're serious about protecting yourself and your kids. Third, it makes it more likely he'll be charged for domestic violence and threats. Fourth, it can help expedite custody and separation proceedings. This is one of those situations where you must choose between hoping for a miracle or preparing for reality. Good luck, and don't stray from your path to safety and happiness. Op. Thank you. It's definitely wishful thinking that he'll get the treatment needed to return to normal. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I also don't know if he would want to be with me after I got him detained. Right now, my only focus is on the kids. Commenter 5. Make sure that, once the protection order is in place, you notify the school that he isn't allowed to take the kids. Also, find a therapist for you and the children to help explain that it's not safe to talk to dad right now. That way, he can't manipulate or seek revenge through them. Good for you for taking these steps. And you're right, his being homeless is not your concern. OP, they're toddlers, so they're too young to fully understand. Their daycare has been made aware as well. Same commenter. I work in daycare, and unless we have a restraining order on paper, we are required to release a child to the other parent if they show up. There's nothing we can do without it. And don't underestimate your kids, children are smarter than you think. Even if they can't articulate everything, they notice a lot. Commenter 6. Keep an eye on your kids as they grow older, particularly in their early 20s, and teach them the signs of mental illness. It could be hereditary, but with foreknowledge, it can be caught early and treated. Commenter 7. I've dealt with something similar. Use this time to start divorce proceedings and make a solid plan. When the 30-day hold is up, doctors, social workers, and even family members will pressure you to take him back. Stay firm and repeat variations of, I do not feel safe with him in the home and I fear for my safety when he is around. Use this time to get legal advice from an attorney experienced in cases involving mentally ill spouses. File for a restraining order for yourself and the kids. The first time my ex was hospitalized, I took him back after being convinced by others. He was furious and blamed me for what happened. The second time, I was lucky to escape with my life. Act now, you have your kids to think about. Update 2, 4 months later. I don't know if anyone will even see this. It's been a while since I updated. I still get messages asking how I am and for an update. I apologize for the delay, but I've been hesitant to post again after stumbling across a TikTok video of one of those AI voices reading my post over a Minecraft video. To whoever runs those channels, please don't use this update. If you do anyway, well, we know who struggles to make unique content. Anyway, here's the actual update. My spouse is doing much better. He received the treatment he needed in the psychiatric ward, now gets a shot periodically instead of taking pills, and only smokes cigarettes. He's back to his normal self, engages in conversations with me and our children like before, has a job, and is genuinely being a better partner overall. It took time for me to trust him again. We've worked hard to rebuild things and get back to where we should be. I know many people wanted me to leave and never look back, but how he acted during that time was completely unlike the person he truly is. What he went through was some form of psychosis, likely triggered by a combination of high-grass use and a series of added stressors. Without revealing too much for privacy reasons, something traumatic happened less than 10 years ago, and a similar event occurred about a month before he started acting strangely. It was one of those situations that forces you out of your home for an indefinite amount of time. When it happened, I was struggling, and he was my rock. But after we returned home and things settled, the change in him began. It started with him obsessively trying to access an old email, then escalated to believing he was being recorded, like in the Truman Show. He eventually became convinced everyone, including me, was plotting against him. That's when the threats of violence began. I was in disbelief because, in all the years we've been together, I had never felt unsafe or scared around him until that time. As the threats continued, his behavior became more alarming. After significant progress in the hospital and numerous reassuring conversations with his psychiatrist, I allowed him to come home when he was discharged. It was incredibly hard not having him around. I cried constantly, the kids missed their dad terribly, and he missed us. He needed help, and I'm so grateful we found an effective solution. This will likely be my last update. I don't think there's much else to add, but I want to thank everyone for their messages and comments, even those who called me an idiot. Lol. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I only wanted you to leave if he refused to get help. He got the help he needed and seems to be back to his normal self. Just keep an eye out for any changes in behavior. Commenter 2. This is a great update. I hope things continue to go well. Don't forget to take care of yourself and your mental health. What you went through must have been so scary. Wishing your family all the best. Commenter 3. Thank you for this update. People often misunderstand when a loved one goes through a mental health crisis and immediately push for separation out of fear and ignorance. I'm glad you reached out to your husband and did everything in your power to help him. You are an incredible and rare person. Few would do what you did. Bringing him back home to his family matters more than anything. I hope he recognizes and appreciates your actions because you went against all odds. It's heartwarming to see such a decent human being in action. Thank you very much.